Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Smart Med Spa Marketing Podcast. Today I am joined by Kaeli Lindholm. And if you don't know who she is, you should, because she's the CEO of KLC Consulting. She's the founder of Pop Aesthetic Leadership Academy, and that is a 12-month business development incubator for women in aesthetics and wellness who are seeking to unleash their superpower through their business, team, and personal brand. Her mission is to help 1,000 inspiring and intentional women cross the next $1 million milestone in their business in 2024. And here's more. She's featured as a Forbes Top 10 Inspiring Women Business Leaders to Watch in 2023 and a USA Today Top 10 Business Leaders Driving Innovation in Their Industries to Watch in 2024. Kaeli and KLC Consulting is trusted as the go-to leadership advisor by hundreds of 7- and 8-figure aesthetic and wellness practice owners. That's quite a mouthful, and welcome, Kaeli Lindholm.
Thanks so much, Matt. Excited to be here today.
I am so glad that you're here. And I believe, unless you've moved since your last podcast recording on another podcast, are you still in Southern California?
Sure am. Born and raised.
Born and raised. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever plan to move? Did you ever think about moving, or do you love hanging your hat there?
Well, it's California, so there's always mixed emotions about California. No, I mean, born and raised here. Actually met my husband my first day of high school. And so we have we're surrounded by family. So the idea of moving certainly crossed my mind, but it wouldn't happen, until we have just the village here. And it's a beautiful place to live, politics aside. It's definitely home for us.
Yes, politics aside, California is a really beautiful place. And every time I go, although I'm unsure about where the next turn may take me, I'm quite amazed at the sights there. So you're married and you've got, I believe, children, and they play sports, and you were a competitive athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that your competitiveness has kind of driven forward what you do on a day-to-day in your leadership and in the programs that you've created?
Oh, I love that question. Without a doubt, I think being an athlete has the DNA of a competitor. We chatted offline about how that's not impacted my golf game well. But, I think athletes and people who routinely put themselves in competitive environments, they learn skills that really lend themselves to succeed through adverse conditions, right? And push the limits of what's possible, and become, I would say, like, widen their threshold for difficult times and for, I think, down times, and having to find solutions and become very resourceful. It's just sort of in our nature.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And do you have like certain trusted mentors and advisors these days that you would look to when you need that like nice kick in the rear?
Oh, for sure. I mean, this is my shtick. I think people joke with me that, like, I have a village of, like, support. And the truth is, I, in ways, like, especially as, we at some point became my own boss, and I don't really have anybody to tell me what to do. I mean, I outsource accountability everywhere around me. So I have a personal trainer, I have a life coach, I have a business coach. I even put accountability into people in my team to help me, like, make sure I don't overrule my own self. So yeah, I think we all need that. Sometimes we need a good kick in the butt. And I think that's a big part of, my job as a coach of female business leaders as well, is to help them sometimes remember the path that they're on and hold space for having those difficult conversations with them and telling them things that most people wouldn't.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you probably do a lot of that in your Pop Aesthetic Leadership Academy, right? So
Yeah,
what sparked the idea to create the consulting company and the academy?
yeah. So I'll just give you a quick 2-minute story about my background. So out of college, I went into a sales career. No, not a big shock as somebody, a competitive athlete, right? Like who
Hmm.
is used to having doors slammed in her face. So I kind of went through the school of hard knocks there. I was recruited into the aesthetic industry to sell skincare and then worked my way up into selling aesthetic devices and eventually became a sales director for one of the world's largest medical aesthetic device companies. And when I was working for that company, one was just really, my dream was to climb the corporate ladder and have the big title and the big team and big responsibility and make a lot of money. And I kind of got there and was like, okay, now what? And I had that sort of entrepreneurial spirit in me and knew someday there would be something for me that I'd want to do independently. And meanwhile, I had a husband in a VP of sales position, and we were both traveling all over the country, and it was just not working well for the family. So I decided to start my business, just thinking, I'm gonna just do a little consulting on the side. My husband called it a jobby, and I landed a contract as eventually became a managing partner and profit share partner with a plastic surgeon, helped him build his practice. So I'd kind of gone from the industry side into the running a practice. And here I thought,
Hmm.
I've been in corporate. I've had teams, we did 150 million in sales last year. Like I can do this with my eyes closed. And I realized that what business owners of these small businesses, especially this plastic surgeon who was a brilliant Ivy League trained surgeon, just didn't have the skills in not only being a business owner, but being a leader and the nuances that go on inside of that. So I basically, through that experience of helping him build and run and lead and manage his practice, came to the conclusion that this was a big gap in our industry. And so after my time of working with him, I decided to launch and scale up to help more people in the industry. And that was sort of the inception of the Pop Leadership Academy, as a place where I could help aesthetic providers come to learn what it takes to run a sustainable, deeply satisfying, lucrative business, while they can continue to do their craft and be excellent at the skills that they have as whatever specialty, right?
Yeah. And is that something that you find? I mean, obviously, you created a company around it. So I
Yeah.
assume that's something that you find pretty often is that a doctor or at one time a nurse, they were passionate about what they did, but they wanted to start their own thing. And in starting their own thing, they only have the passion for the thing. But the leadership is not, it needs some work.
Totally. It's a completely different skill. And if you think about it, uh, most of them, we like to call it, have found success by accident, particularly in this industry that is growing at just this, exponential pace. And the demand is so high. And we work with people who they're people, and they want to
Mhm.
take care of people. They're healers, right? And so all of a sudden, in order for them to be able to express themselves through their craft of, the artistry of aesthetics, and through being a provider and practitioner of healing patients, the only way for them to be able to do that is to learn the skills of running the business, which is the vessel that gives them the opportunity to do that. So it's not uncommon. And I can't tell you, Matt, on a daily basis, I have women who come to me that say, like, we'll look at their financials and like they're crushing it, multi-million dollars in revenue, profitable, building a team, and they'll say, Kaeli, I'm a great injector, but I'm a terrible business person. And I laugh and I say, really? If you walk down the aisle in the grocery store and tell somebody about your business and they looked at your P&L, do you think they would say that?
Mhm.
They're like, no. So I think that there's an instinct for just, if you're really passionate and focused on doing the right things, it's just a little polishing of putting the infrastructure in place and building the system around you to support you, to make sure that you don't have to be so worried about those inadequacies, quote unquote, on the business side, you've got that ecosystem that supports you so that you're on the right track. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you're going on the right track through particularly your academy, I know that you've seen a lot of clients have success. And in your experience, what do you think has had the most impact on the growth of these business owners? Is there a particular stage that they really see a major shift happen for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. We go through, just think of a human being, right? And how a baby, cries and needs mama, and then a toddler trying to get all this, run around and explore. And then now I've got a middle schooler and a high schooler. And to think that high schooler who's, getting ready to drive and wants to, check out parties and do those things is the same kid that was a baby. That we evolve as humans, and we do also as leaders in our business, and our business changes, right? And so the moment is when somebody decides to adopt the idea and realize and recognize that we have to show up differently for our business. And it's really when they learn how to become a better leader of their ecosystem. So I know it's not the specific answer that maybe, everybody would tell you. It's not a number, to be honest. It's about the mindset of the entrepreneur and how they decide to show up as not just somebody that's building a business that's centered around them, but to become the CEO or the leader of what that business independently needs to operate and function efficiently. So it's all
here. I think that could be very closely tied to like mental health, like I see a therapist, right? And there's not like a point where you're just like, oh, okay, I'm a better human being all of a sudden. It's a process, it's a journey, it's a evolving process, not necessarily just a point.
Yeah, for sure. And that's how we've designed our programming. It's very much, a lot of people I want the top of the 10-step process. I want the blueprint, the frame, and I totally get that. And I'm asked all the time for SOPs or scripts or templates or PDFs. And the truth is, none of those matter if I'm not learning how to manage an employee after I give them the task, or to hold them accountable, or to have a difficult conversation with somebody, or to manage through my hiring PTSD because I went through a really bad experience with my past employee and now I don't feel like I can hire again. So I'll just do it myself. So the way that we built our programming is to show up every single week and do the work. Isn't that the worst? We just want to know, I want to climb the mountain. Just tell me the number and I'll run those miles. But it's actually showing up and doing the practice, back to the golf analogy of going to the driving range and hitting the mundane, practice of hitting balls. So we make it easy for them. Alex Hermosi uses this analogy in his sales lessons about teeth brushing. And I like to use that a lot. Remember when you were a kid and you went to, your parents told you to brush your teeth. You didn't want to brush your teeth, but they made you do it, right? You need to brush your teeth. But Matt, do you brush your teeth every day now?
I do, yeah.
Because they sort of forced you to make it a habit. And so that's where we're shifting the practice of showing up to work on your business in a different way because of the way that we've designed the curriculum. So much of it happens sort of just by trusting the process and showing up for it. Again, buying into the idea that if I take my time and invest in myself in this way, that I know that I'm going to, reap the rewards of that. But it is not an overnight thing. It's really just an empowered decision to go on that journey. Yeah.
I love that. And I had a pretty similar experience when I first started working out. I went through 75 hard, and now I just work out 3 to 7 times a week.
Yep.
Whereas before that, 4 times a year. So it was I just had to show up for a while, and then brushing teeth.
What was that when you decided to do 75 hard? What was it that was the tipping point for you that made you make that investment in yourself?
Just realizing I needed I needed to be more and better for myself, my body, my future, because I've got big goals, and I'm sure a lot of people listening here have big goals, and I can tell very clearly, Kaylee, you have big goals.
Yeah.
If you have big goals, you got to do something different than what everyone else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
So now, outside of showing up, what can business owners expect when they enroll in your 12-month business incubator program?
Yeah. So our promise is that if you come in and do the work, we will help you build a business that at the end of the year, your grandma could come in and run. And the idea is that we joke like, could Granny take a shift? Because what we're trying to do is teach, first of all, the big picture of what we call 5 business growth milestones. So all the way from your mindset, how you view yourself in your business, setting boundaries, confidence to show up as a CEO, sort of that identity shift of who am I in relationship to my business, to the brand positioning aspect of it, and internal marketing. Who are you as a business in your marketplace? How do people perceive you? What are you doing to attract the most high value clientele and getting referrals from them and building that sort of like my people ecosystem? The hiring piece, right? Hiring, firing, onboarding, performance management, all of the nuances that go on with just acquiring, retaining, and I'd say kicking out of the nest the employees that aren't keeping up with the pace of the company, and being able to learn how to assess that, build comp plans, and surround yourself with really great people. The sales piece of it, what to track and measure, what are the key results areas or KPIs, key performance areas for your business in total and all of the people in your business. And then ultimately how to build systems, processes, your standard operating procedures, so that everything that you've worked on from point A to, Z is now buttoned up into an organized system in which this is really building, structure so that you can have freedom as a provider and owner in your business. So let's say Susie didn't show up, you could call grandma would come in. Everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, how to operate and get in line. And there's documented systems, there's videos, there's support tools. So if there's questions, everyone kind of knows what to do without, anyone having to micromanage, oversee, and, try to remember. As an owner, you've got a million things on your mind. And so I hear all the time, like, oh man, I asked somebody, Sally, to do something, and then I thought of it while I was laying on the beach on, my vacation 3 weeks later. And it was like, oh, what happened to that? Never got done. We need to get those things out of our head and build systems in place in the company for that. So that's essentially what the academy is all about. It's a 1 year of the nuts and bolts of what you didn't learn and taking accountability to become that leader of putting into practice what you expect excellence to look like for you and for your customers.
Yeah. And I love that last part where you focus on the leadership aspect. I'm sure you follow John Maxwell, or you've at least heard of him. And one of my favorite quotes from him is, everything rises and falls on leadership. Yeah. And so you, as a leader, have to put all these things together. You have to organize the systems. You have to go to the Pop Aesthetic Leadership Academy in order to get your business going and on track, so that you can help your employees, so that you can help your customers, your clients, because that's why we're in business, right? Is to help people. You're in business to help people. They're in business to help people. So that is, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on, I know you mentioned internal marketing, and of course there's the external marketing and what people perceive and believe about you. What are your thoughts on marketing in and for med spas, and are there common marketing mistakes that you often see?
Oh, such a big question. My thoughts on marketing are it's kind of everything, I think it's the nucleus of setting the stage of who you are. I happen to have a marketing degree because I love marketing, but so much of what I've learned as a business owner and building my business about marketing comes from just the internal clarity of who I am and who I want to attract to best serve in my business. I think the biggest, it's such a big term. I think our industry like blankets marketing, right? But there's so many different aspects to marketing. So I think that first of all is just not really understanding what marketing means. And so many times, I'm sure you've experienced this or have worked with clients who've experienced in the past, commissioning a marketing agency to like do all the marketing, right? And yet they don't have a clear brand position in the marketplace. So for example, if you look at the car industry, there's cars all the way from, an entry-level Honda up to a Lamborghini. Cars are not cars. And yet there's still business for everybody, but Honda knows who their customers are and Lamborghini knows who their customers are. So the way that they're going to market themselves, the way that they're going to show up, and their brand strategy in terms of the way they look and act, and their graphic design and all of the visuals and, what they do and how they approach customers, like it's going to be very different. Honda might be digital marketing directly to, a one type of client, where Lamborghini is probably going to be all referral based, hand delivered boxes with, luxury events, things like that. And what happens is practices will kind of follow the flow, like of the patient of the day, and teeter totter, or become very sort of reactive to a lot of patients are asking just for this, or don't want to spend money, or don't. So instead of elevating their clientele to market to the type of customer that's going to really appreciate the results that they're going to get and the experience and credentialing that provider has, they have this sort of vision. They feel insufficient or unworthy and scared that they're going to lose business. And so they become everything to everybody. And if you think about it, like I worked and ran a plastic surgery practice. And so we didn't really, it didn't make sense for us to have our high-end facelift client who was coming in to spend $30,000 to $50,000 and wanted, luxury white glove service, to be sitting in the same patient waiting room as someone that's coming in for, a Mohs reconstruction or something, like a skin grafting, or, it's, so you have to be really thoughtful about how you market, and then you utilize your marketing agency and the resources to then drive that through. And then I'll finally say this: so much marketing happens in the practice. How are you answering the phones? What's the language you're using? What's happening when they come in? What's the communication like? What's the client flow and journey like? How are you communicating and developing, earning trust and bringing value before they come in for a consultation? So I think like the marketing conversation, we could have hours of conversation about that. And I'm curious, your perspective working with med spas as well. But I think there's a lot of confusion. And working through ideating and really evaluating we like to talk about the 80-20 rule, right? Like who are the heavy hitters in your practice that are going to really drive results for you? And that means, your high spenders, but also the people you love working with, the patients that you're excited to see, the people that bring you joy. Who are those people, and how do we attract more of those?
Yeah. And you clearly say brand positioning, that's a huge aspect. Brand belief, your identity, who you're helping. You have to know who you're helping. I mean, like, particularly, we help med spas. If we just help anybody, which we do have some non-med spa clients, but if we just help anybody, guess what? It's a lot harder to work with everyone, because you don't have standardized processes. You don't have something that cognitively every single day. In the last year, I've learned more about semaglutide and tirzepatide than I ever thought I would learn about. But I know everything there is to know about GLP-1s and how to market with and for them. And so it's very clear med spas are who I help. And it's very clear that a med spa, if they only do a particular type of injectable or whatever they may wish to do, you can't do everything. In fact, I won't name any names, but I know of a med spa that had more than they could handle And I have looked at several years of their P&L, and I'm sure you could guess, without me directly saying it, what has happened to them.
Mm.
They took on too much, and it was unfortunate. So know who
Yeah.
you are, be who you are, and show up as that, and only that, and don't try and be everything for everyone. So that's good. I love that message, and I think a lot of people should hang their hat on that.
Yeah.
Now, about you, Kaeli, you have a great online presence.
Oh.
What does social media, what role does social media play in your business? And do you have any social media advice for consistency or engagement or anything like that for our audience?
Oh, well, you're too kind. I don't know if my online presence is that great. But we, I, I would say I'm very, very clear about um, who we can help best serve based on our areas of expertise. So I'm very focused on who and what we talk about. To the niching, like I daily have women say, I'm in real estate or I work in, this industry and you should work with everybody. And we certainly could, it's not like
Mhm.
what we do couldn't translate out, but there's a Bruce Lee quote I'm totally going to butcher, but it's like, I'd rather face the man who's does something about one kick 1,000 times versus 1,000 kicks. I'm gonna have to look it up because I'm totally butchering it. Someone's probably listening to this, like Haley, but like, right? You want like somebody who
Yeah.
has mastered that one like knockout punch, like they've done that 1,000 times versus like 1,000 different types of like punches and kicks is not going to be as effective as somebody who's mastered that one thing. So yeah, I mean, I think that the key with social media is do what works for you. And I was that sort of stressed out in the beginning, like I have to show up everywhere and be on every platform
Mhm.
and more is more. And instead I have come to the reality that I do what feels good for me. And I also I don't look at what other people are doing to in-source, sort of my inspiration. I just try to do what feels good to me and try to put out what I would want to see, right? Or what I
Mhm.
would want. So sometimes it's me checking my ego a little bit and not looking, like a top 10 supermodel all the time and, just being real and authentic. And I think that's really what people want. I remember when Instagram first, it was all about like the super curated little post with like, it was the colors matched and everything. And I think we're so far away
Yeah.
from that now. We just want, authenticity. And if you look at the people who have the biggest and the most lucrative followings that are actually getting paid for it, you will be shocked.
Mhm.
Like there's this girl, I mean, my friend sends me all the time and she just sits and eats pickles. Like she noshes on like pickles dipped in mustard. I mean, the weirdest things, right? And it's like, because people
Yeah.
are curious and they want to just kind of lean into like, what are you doing? So I think being really authentic and then also not not so much like bucking trends a little bit and following back to the
Mhm.
brand strategy. Like I'm selling B2B essentially, right? So even though they're women, but they're looking to spend tens of thousands of dollars in investment and working with us, and not to mention the emotional transformation they have to go through. So like I am
Mhm.
really, really spending time in my copy. I'm really thoughtful about not just using AI to generate, oh, catch this, look at this, la la la. Like I'm really thoughtful about that. So I think, and that's what works for my audience. That's what they want. They want to know, how can you really help me and what do you do? And so that's what my advice would be to just like allow yourself to speak to like that one dream client every time and be just don't worry about the likes that come and all of the things, like just keep showing up and doing what is the best reflection of the best work that you do, and the business will come from it.
I've had a great realization in the past that you probably, I would assume you probably had this, where someone will mention a post that you made to
Yeah.
you in person, but they didn't comment on it or they didn't even like it if you go back and check, which I often do. They didn't comment or like it, but they saw it and they talk about it to you in person. And so even if yes, to your point, if you don't see the likes and you don't see the comments, there are people that are still seeing it and watching it and consuming
Yeah.
it and taking all of it in. And that's really important. Now, something
Actually,
that you've mentioned.
ready
Go
buyers
ahead.
are usually just creeping. Like they're just sitting
Mhm.
there watching and not because they're getting ready to pounce, So they're
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
they're there.
they're there.
Now, also on your Instagram, you mentioned hiring intrapreneurs. Can you speak more on this and the importance of having a team of intrapreneurs in a business?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I like to think of a business like a sports team, shocking. I think that if you shift your mindset ultimately, right? I use one of my favorite, just I like people that I look up to. I don't want to say idol, but somebody I respect a lot as a leader is Nick Saban, who was the coach of the Alabama football program he's retired now a year or two ago. But it came to me one day when my son, who's 11, he said, I want to play football at Alabama Sunday. And I said, Luke, you live in California. Like, could you pick UCLA, USC, Stanford, like I don't know, any of it. Like, do you need to go to Alabama? You've never been to Alabama. So no, I want to play for Nick Saban. And I said, well, tell me about him. And I started really researching Nick Saban. And Nick Saban, he built a legacy program, not just a team, but he would stack the bench with like people who were not really ready to play yet, but that were like, put me in, coach. He brought a type in, and he was investing in players who then became coaches of their own programs. And I think ended up with 15 NFL and Division I football coaches that he had met who had gone through his program as players. And it's this idea of not just being, building your company, but building people to build and grow your company for you. It's a complete mindset shift. And that's a part of the philosophy that we teach in our academy as well. So I think it's just really about like, the idea of an entrepreneur is somebody who sees their role in your company as their own job, their own career, like they own that role. And so the way I look at it as a leader is I give them, they know exactly what results are expected of them. And then I give them the runway to go and achieve that. I'm not micromanaging every piece of it. I'm in step with them, mentoring them as needed through the process, but I'm also allowing them space to fail so that they can make the mistake on their own and learn from it. And I think it's hard for us as owners to allow that space for our people to fail because we're so scared that of the domino effect and impact that could have, or my reputation, or if we're giving a C level of service when I expect an A. And I have found, through my seasons of hiring and, losing great people and firing people who weren't right and all of those things, is that the best way for an employee to learn how to the best way for them to grow is through their own failures and through the experiences of seeing their role as their own. And that's also a mindset. So I'm hiring to that. I'm hiring to people that I think like, would she or he run through a wall? Like, are they like, I want someone who's so passionate that they care so much about what kind of result they deliver and how they want to put their fingerprint on something. And so I believe in creating space for people to do their very best and grow into the people that they are destined to become within the infrastructure of our business. And that's what an intrapreneur means to me.
I love that. And you have to empower your people in order for your business itself to be more powerful. Because if you don't let your people fail, then who's going to grow?
No, totally. And it's not like fail, like
Yeah.
you're going to absolutely lose everything. But yes, I think safely fail, like make okay, something as simple as I hired a new employee. We've gone through all the training and the phone scripts and, and now it's time to go and answer that phone. If you haven't done that, it's actually quite scary. Believe it sounds pretty easy. And I think people like overlook like, it's just answering the phone. No, it's not. It's not just answering the phone. It's the gatekeeper of the business. It's the first. It's a
Hmm.
critically important role. So if somebody cares, they're gonna, but they might stumble over their words. They might not follow the script right, and that's okay. And then we're gonna reconvene and learn from it. Failures happen with injectors. They have an adverse event. How do we recover from it? What do we do? So yeah, it's safe failure, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned earlier, and in some of your social media content, about setting boundaries as a business owner and as a leader. Do you have any particular advice around this? Do you have practices that you use? Like, for instance, I have something on my phone that turns off every notification by default.
Yeah.
What kind of things do you do to make yourself better at boundaries?
Yeah. So I'll give you like a few, like, how about three of my like best tactics. So
Mhm.
number one is calendar blocking. So instead of just, squeezing in time for lunch with my mom whenever I can, if that's something that's important to me, I look at, like, as you went through your 75 hard and you're going through your therapy and trying to become the better version of Matt. When I look at the better version of Kaeli, and I really look into my future and who I want to spend my time with and what I want to be. I want to be a daughter that has lunch with my parents once a month. And so I'm putting that on the calendar and blocking that time. In the morning, my morning routine, you'll see I have chunks blocked on, wherever on my calendar. So like Mondays, these are, my time for workouts. These are Tuesdays coaching, right? So all the things, kids, like,
Mhm.
and then I can start putting activities into those. So leading me to technique number two, I call the AID method. So what that means is everything in my mind or on my to-do list, I go through an exercise of of categorizing everything: automate, delegate, or eliminate. So I'm looking not at how do I get through that task, but I'm asking myself, who can I delegate that to? How can I eliminate the fact that I
Mhm.
even have this as a task, or how can I automate this? What's left, then I put into those blocks of my calendar. And if they don't fit into those blocks of priorities, they don't belong in my life. So those are two of them. And then the third one I would say is what I call, I don't know, it's a pool visualization. And I don't know originally how I came up with this, or really heard this. So, but I think of this as like your pool being your business, and you can only
Mhm.
have 10 people in your pool. So the reason why it's a pool, it's because it kind of makes you think about, instead of just this infinite space of where people are all around you and you interact with everybody, you're having like a pool party and you're going to invite just 10 people. Who are those people? Like, who are the people that love, respect, trust, honor, uplift you, support you, challenge you, right? That you really need to be your best self. They wouldn't come in your pool and, like, rip the floaty out and watch you drown. They wouldn't come in your pool and say, like, thanks for inviting me, but I don't love the temperature of your pool. They wouldn't pee in your pool. They would be there to, like, be like, this is awesome, Kaeli. Like, Matt, your pool is the best pool. What else can I do to make this pool? Like, I'm going to bring
Yeah.
the refreshments, and I'm going to help. And I think this mindset of, it's okay for you to say no to the people, the things that are around you that don't belong in your pool. And if you really think about, are they in your 10, and the answer is no, then you can elegantly, allow that to pass through your life. And so that's something I think about routinely when I'm asked to do things. I say no a lot. Unless it belongs in my priority list, and or it's somebody that's going to help me in a productive way accomplish my goals.
Have you read the book or heard of essentialism?
I have not.
It goes over some of those topics, and it definitely talks about quite a bit. Yeah, the power of saying no, and the more you say no, the better yeses you can give to the right things. So I love that. I love the pool analogy. I'm going to keep that if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, and too, Jim Collins has a book called From Good to Great, and I think
Oh
we a
yeah.
lot of times just kind of settle for what's good, because not having something that's okay means not having something. And it feels very
Mhm.
lack. It feels very empty.
Yeah.
And so, but I think in line with that essentialism, the philosophy is that you can't even access great if that space is filled with good. So you have to eliminate good to make room for great.
Absolutely. Now, you also mentioned earlier that sometimes as a business owner, you might not show up feeling like you are all that, even if your P&L says that you are. Um, do you have any advice on overcoming imposter syndrome in entrepreneurship and in life in general?
Yes, I've recorded an entire podcast on that specific topic of imposter syndrome. I think that there's no high achiever who doesn't have it, because we're constantly
Mhm.
reaching to access a place of experience that we don't have. So it's one, the truth is we probably have it because we're lacking some sort of skill. And two, we have it because we see ourselves as that old version of Matt, right? Because as
Mhm.
we're growing as people, we have to go through that identity shift. And sometimes you get into a space where you forget who you've become, and you show up as that old person again. And an example for me was kind of growing up in my 20s, like through my 20s and 30s, in the industry as a rep and manager, and like that the industry and network that I sort of leveled up in. And now I'm, a thought leader in our industry. I see myself as that, or I try to be, right. I'm on stage, I'm creating new
Mhm.
ideas and philosophies for us to really think about the way we do things differently around here. And so sometimes I'll bump into people that I saw back then, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just me, and then I have to remember, like, no, look what I built. And I think we do that when we put ourselves in uh new new ecosystem, like just entirely new experiences that we haven't had before. And then we remember that we're growing up into that. So I think, like, one exercise is just simply any one thought that you have about, I'm an imposter. Like, for example, who am I to speak on this stage? And then writing that down on a piece of paper, and then answering the question, 3 reasons why you are that person.
Mhm.
And you sort of combat yourself, like the devil angel, like, hey, I thought the one side of me told me this, but I'm going to prove you wrong over here. So I think it's just a practice and reminding yourself. And then finally, surrounding yourself with people who think bigger than you and believe harder and more in your dreams than you even do. And you need that sometimes. You need someone to say, wait a minute, Matt, I know you told me that this is who you were becoming and where you were growing to and where you were going to want to go.
Mhm.
And now I'm going to remind you that, like, you're there and you can be there. And here's why. And when you have people that can help reinforce that for you, it makes all the difference. Like, truly, do you have someone in your life like that, Matt?
I've got a few people, yeah, and sometimes I text them and be like, "Hey, uh, just need a little bit of affirmation for a second. Can you spare some?" And because you also have to recognize when it's happening, like you said, writing it down and answering those questions. You have to the first step to recovery is acknowledging there's a problem, right? You have to acknowledge that it's there
Totally.
before you can do something. Now we've only got a few minutes left. I don't want to keep you for too long. So we've got a couple more questions to get through. If there is one book that you would recommend anyone to listen, other than your ebook, Diary of a Female Entrepreneur, what book would that be?
Yeah. So I recommend, for the women that we work with who are founders of really great businesses, but haven't put the hat on to becoming a CEO of their company yet, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. There's a few of them, but
Mhm.
that's a good one to start with because it helps you. He uses the analogy of an entrepreneurial seizure, where you're like, oh, now I'm a business owner. Like, you just kind of became all of a sudden, but if you left the business, it would not run without you. And so it sort of teaches you
Mhm.
he does a really great job of walking you through the idea of what it takes to build a real company. So that's a great place to start. And then, there's other books I'd recommend as you sort of move up into your leadership journey, but that's a really great starting point.
Love that. And E-Myth, I think, is recommended in at least 4 of the books I've read. I just haven't read it yet, so
Ah,
it's on that
okay.
list. But
Yeah.
I've heard it's a good book by proxy. Now, can you share a valuable lesson or a piece of advice that you would leave the audience with today
Oh, geez.
about anything, either direct or personal, business, whatever you want?
Oh gosh, my one advice. Um, yeah, I would say I'd probably go back to like, take a hard look. Like if you are looking to, and even this is a marketing podcast. So like, people listening or thinking about like, how do I be a better marketer of my business? I would say like, get really quiet and clear about what you want in your life and draw that out, map it out, put it on paper, visualize it, be very clear about what you stand for, what your mission is in the world, the vision is for your company, and what your values are as a company. I think when you become really strong on those foundational elements and for you as a human being, then the decisions that you make, how you market, who you work with, who you hire, how you move about growing your business becomes very clear to you because you know exactly who you are and what you stand for. So I think I was going to start in any kind of advice, it would be to really work on honing all of that in before you make any other moves in your business.
Yeah, love that. And you told me that you have, I think, an event of some sort coming up, Confidence to Scale.
Yeah, so we are just getting ready to launch we have a 6-week business growth certification program. So this is really great for people who are looking to set that foundation. I need to reimagine or reinvent myself. What are my mission, vision, values? Maybe you've scaled up to a point where you're at that inflection point where I'm not sure whether do I grow from here or do I just stay here? And what's the blueprint for growth? How do I set those boundaries? How do I navigate through imposter syndrome? So this is a 6-week program that's delivered one-on-one coaching and group coaching via a private podcast that's getting ready to launch early October, end of September, early October. So that is available, open for enrollment now at klcconsultants.com/scale.
Perfect. And you just slightly jumped ahead. Where can the audience find more about you and KLC
Yeah,
Consulting?
so I manage or actively engage on my own Instagram. It's Kaeli, Kaeli.Lindholm, and or a website klcconsultants.com, and there's access to all kinds of free resources or programs, and obviously CTS, Confidence to Scale, if you're ready and looking to become a better leader and want to take that first step.
And you have your own podcast, I believe,
Oh,
right?
yes. How could I not say that? Yes. Thank you,
I
Matt. Go
feel
listen
free
to
to
The Fierce
continue to plug.
Factor. I had a podcast for 4.5 years. Yes, The Fierce Factor.
The Fierce Factor podcast.
Yes.
All right. So klcconsulting.com, Instagram, Kaeli.Lindholm, and make sure you guys check out the upcoming 6-week program, Confidence to Scale, and the ebook, Diary of a Female Entrepreneur. Kaeli, do you have any final words for us today?
No, I think we covered it all. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Matt.
It was great having you. And thank you, everyone who's listening. Stay tuned for the next Smart Med Spa Marketing Podcast episode.